evening, everyone. It looks like my mic is working. Just a minute ago, Dip, who is perfectly coordinated with the bedspread this evening, was actually under the bedspread surveying the rest of the room from his vantage, which I love watching. It's actually adorable. He goes under the blanket and then he turns around and he pokes his head out and the rest of him is under the blanket. It's just so cute and I love it. And both of the pets love going under the blankets. If you guys want to watch their shenanigans, they're over on Instagram at THELEITERDIPS. Let us see what tweet Andy has cooked up for us tonight. He says, he's live right now. Who knew? I'm live right now. Tonight, President Biden proposes emergency authorization of funds toward time travel research to bring back Sherlock Holmes to help solve the White House Library Coke mystery. Oh my gosh. Good work. Good work, dear. He was like, I don't know what we're talking about tonight. Tell me, and then I will tweet it out. So I told him to tweet about the greatest mystery of whatever century it is we're in right now, and that is the baggie at the White House, which no one can place. No one will say anything about. No one's talking. I'm really curious if somebody actually comes out and discusses who they think did it. And if anyone comes out and tells us if they have like camera evidence of this. But excuse me. Oh my goodness. Okay, so tonight we're going to play it by ear. It's going to be a little light and a little silly because it is summertime and there's not a whole lot of stuff going on. Excuse me. I have hiccups again as usual, which is great. We're going to start dark and then try to get a little bit lighter. Andy and I watched The Sound of Freedom on Saturday evening. Really, really, really well done. Highly recommend. And it seems like all of these mainstream media organizations are really recommending this too, because if we look over here, I'm going to show you guys how many times the Rolling Stone tweeted about this and what happened as a result, because I just sent Andy screenshots. They tweeted about this 4 times. I don't think it was in a row, but it was 4 different times on 4 separate occasions. And here they say, to know thousands of adults will absorb Sound of Freedom, this vigilante fever dream, and come away thinking themselves better informed on a hidden civilizational crisis. Yeah, I'm going to stop you right there, Rolling Stone, because that's exactly what goes on here. Got 215 likes and 1,000 comments. So they were severely ratioed on this one. But it gets way better. So, they did 4 different tweets. I thought I could scroll back and forth. I'll just click on it. Review: Sound of Freedom, the QAnon-tinged thriller about child trafficking, is designed to appeal to the conscience of a conspiracy-addled boomer. 26,000 comments, 4,000 likes. So I've never seen a ratio quite of this scale. I tag my pal Ratio Watch and everything I see like this. I'm like, this might actually be one for the Hall of Fame, because this is much, much, much more than the usual like 5-to-1 ratio, which is what we saw in the other one. This one, 9,000 comments, 937 likes. So we have a 10-to-1-ish. And on this last one, 9,000. Oh, are these the same one? Hold on one second. Let me make sure. I think I got 2 of them. Yeah, back to back. They did tweet about it 4 times, and every single time of those 4 times, they were ratioed into the galaxy. So I was really happy to see that people are not having any of their nonsense. I was also looking at, oh yeah, this is terrible. This is a case of a soccer coach in Tennessee who left his phone at a restaurant. And when employees picked it up and looked at it to try to figure out whose it was, they discovered video evidence of graphic child abuse of something like 10 different victims just on this one phone, just this one device. He's being held on bail, just over $500,000, and Robbie Starbuck has this to say about it. I will be making it my mission to pass a law in Tennessee that results in these particular kinds of child abusers getting the death penalty. Mark my words, we will make it happen in the next year. I will use every ounce of political influence I have to make it happen. Enough is enough, and these people deserve the ultimate penalty. So really, really bad case, and really, really interesting timing as far as the mainstream media goes, because as we know, looking at Rolling Stone and looking at some of these other mainstream media outlets, these apologists are just really coming out strongly in favor of actual human trafficking and abuse. And it's actually melting people's minds. Like Michael Knowles was saying today on his Daily Wire podcast that He did not believe that they were affiliated in this way before this went down, but now he kind of does. And I just have to say, the people who are accusing everyone of being QAnon conspiracy theorists are really kind of doing the work of QAnon here and kind of proving that they really have a point, right? So QAnon, one of the things that they talk about is like this vast, horrible conspiracy against children, right? To take advantage of children for whatever reason. All kinds of malign purposes, all kinds of horrible abuses I won't get into here. And the media covering this like they have is really kind of probably making a lot of perfectly normal people think that maybe Q might be onto something. So that's a really interesting turn of phrase. Stuart, thank you. We cannot see Sound of Freedom over here in Europe yet, but I really want to see it. Tim Ballard is a hero. He absolutely is a hero. If you guys have not listened to Tim Ballard and Jim Caviezel talk to Jordan Peterson, wonderful, wonderful podcast over on, well, I say wonderful, really hard to listen to. They really get into a lot of the nitty gritty. It's pretty painful, but it's very, very important. One of the things I was talking to Andy about this last weekend was that it turns out that the things that are most important in life are often the most difficult. And I really think that's the case pretty much 100% of the time. Like thinking about how to make significant political change means going right down to the cultural level and changing what individuals think about, things like abortion and marriage and having families and all that good stuff. And it's really hard, and no one person's going to be able to fix it. No party's going to be able to fix it. But in the same vein, listening to this podcast and kind of informing yourself about what Tim Ballard went through, what he was exposed to, parts of the reasons that he was convinced to quit his very cushy job, and he forfeited his pension, which was at that time up to a lot of money. He had 6 kids at the time. He now has 9, I think. But he gave up a lot to make this happen, and I was very impressed by his actions. So definitely. Texas Ranger says, can't wait to see The Sound of Freedom. You should. We should make this a box office blowout. And we should take the information that we learn from Tim and Jim and their conversation with people like Jordan Peterson. They're kind of making the rounds, going on a bunch of different podcasts and shows. Really, yeah. The movie itself was a tearjerker. It was very emotionally charged. As it is, this topic is not something that you can really discuss without getting into very, very emotional territory. So, yeah, definitely. I don't think there's a dry eye in the theater. Everybody was very engaged with the movie. It was a full theater. I tweeted out the other day that, see if I can find that tweet. Because I was comparing the seating for these 2 different movies at the time. I was looking at Indiana Jones versus The Sound of Freedom. And Indiana Jones has so many empty seats. And I was like, why is Indiana Jones being shown the door by Sound of Freedom? So these are the available seats from Saturday night. I was trying to find us a place to go that afternoon, and this was their 3:50 showing. I looked at like 3 different showings, and all of them had this same ridiculous, like huge, a lot of the seats were taken, right? So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 empty seats. And then Indiana Jones has basically looks like 16 seats full. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 35 seats full. So let me see. They're the same size theater, are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. No, they gave Indiana Jones the bigger theater, and they had comparable number of seats. They had more seats. They had far more seats empty than The Sound of Freedom did by percentage. So I just thought it was interesting. I also looked at some of the other movies they had. This one was a really small theater, and they only had 5 seats filled. And another really small one, and Transformers only got a small theater and only had a few seats filled. So, yeah. Andy says the only reason we found decent seats was because they wouldn't recline properly. That's right. They were broken, so nobody wanted them, which sucked. But Texas Ranger, I would love to see Chess Chick 01 Natalie Danielison on your show. Very interesting. I will have to reach out to her and see if she's interested. I know that she has contacts with the Mises Institute, I think it was. So yeah, she might be a super interesting guest. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your super chat, Sexist Rangers. All right, let's read a little bit about the media coverage of The Sound of Freedom, and we'll move on from this blockbuster of a movie. Corrupt media care more about QAnon than human trafficking. Yeah, 100%. Angel Studios' a recent film, Sound of Freedom, which adapts the true story of a government agent turned vigilante who worked within legal means to fight an international child sex trafficking ring, is receiving great commercial success and critical acclaim. Briefly outperforming the latest pile of Disney slop, Sound of Freedom is a well-produced and well-acted film that effectively blends action and suspense while pushing one of the modern world's most significant yet under-discussed issues to the forefront of public discourse. This issue, of course, being the multi-billion-dollar global human trafficking industry. Here's Peachy Keenan, whom I love and admire. Here's my variety headline: Indie movie beats indie movie. Haha, that's a really good headline. Good work. Good work. Sound of Freedom got 14 million. Indiana Jones got 11 million. Interesting. The point of the movie, as expressed by its star Jim Caviezel in a heartfelt mid-credits call to action, is to wake people up to the horrors of the all-too-real and overlooked exploitation of children in the contemporary sex trade. This seems like a pretty harmless task, no? If anything, one would think that a widely popular cultural phenomenon attempting to encourage people to stand against the ongoing exploitation of children is a net positive. Yes, you would think that, right? In fact, I've seen a lot of comments talking about how this should be like the only bipartisan issue in the world. But for some expletive reason, it's not. For some reason, this is not bipartisan. They are making this a partisan conversation, and I just want to know why. It sounded to me like the Rolling Stone was scared. And we also know that the editor of the Rolling Stone spiked a story about a pal of his who was arrested for child sexual abuse material, I believe is the name they use on the internet. However, perhaps unsurprisingly, left-wing media took the opportunity to lambast Sound of Freedom as a superhero movie for dads with brainworms and a trafficking fantasy fit for QAnon. Now, why would they do that? I think they're afraid. I think they feel like their lifestyles are coming under scrutiny. And I say their lifestyles because, what Rolling Stone did, what their editor did, spiking a story that would have exposed a pal of the newspapers to really, really outsized scrutiny as far as their viewing habits go, we'll put it that way. Rolling Stone placing a comically outsized focus on the near total absence of procedural logic and the film's embellishment of real-life events. It is a movie, after all, onanistically kvetched. Okay, that's a great expression. I'm sure you guys know what onanism is. I don't want to unpack it for you. If you guys want to look it up, do that now. Kvetching is complaining, according to our Yiddish friends. Kvetched about Caviezel's and Tim Ballard's, the man whose story The Sound of Freedom adapted, conservative affiliations, impassioned anti-human trafficking activism, and the possibility that they may believe in the QAnon conspiracy theory. Rolling Stone, incredibly concerned about the film's enforcing stereotypes about trafficking, downplayed the reality of the international human trafficking trade by suggesting thousands of adults will absorb Sound of Fury, as a vigilante fever dream, and that wanting to spread the word about the reality of this international trade is, quote, profoundly depressing. Yes, they really did say that. These are the people who are controlling the conversation in this country. These are journalists. So yeah, here we are. Jezebel cynically amplified skepticism about the film's intentions by suggesting that Caviezel's anti-human trafficking activism is being used to, quote, peddle QAnon theory. So I need to stop them again right there and say, listen, if they are saying something that QAnon has been saying, isn't it time for you to reevaluate what you think about QAnon? Because if there's a grain of truth in QAnon, maybe it's something that you should think about. But of course, they can't and won't do that. And the Washington Post similarly cast aside the film's message because of past statements made by Caviezel regarding, quote, adrenochrome, and Ballard's work insufficiently passing the leftist ideological smell test. That's something the Rolling Stone did as well. They were talking about the climate crisis as a reason to focus on visible issues. The subtext here being that we should all absolutely be ignoring all of the invisible issues, including this trafficking trade. Evidently, raising awareness about and working to stop child sex trafficking is irrelevant if you don't properly adhere to the contemporary politically correct orthodoxy. Yeah. In reality, human trafficking is a relevant issue. Even the UN agrees, but left-wing media would rather drool over the specter of an irrelevant conspiracy theory than acknowledge that conservative Americans are working to effect positive change. Yes, correct. Absolutely correct. Good observation. Well, the other thing that I wanted to point out as well was not just how they treated Sound of Freedom, although I did say we will move on after this, but what exactly they thought about the film Cutie. So let's look at this here real quick. Rolling Stone. Thanks to a major marketing mistake, the award-winning French movie Cuties was accused of sexualizing young girls. It's actually a sensitive portrait of growing pains that deserves to be seen. Our review, and then of course that is next to their idea of what exactly is wrong with a conversation of human trafficking as displayed in Sound of Freedom. And then I added this headline because this was really interesting and especially pertinent. Rolling Stone accused of whitewashing child sex crime angle of ex-ABC News producer's home raid. So this would be the editor of Rolling Stone covering for their pal, who was the former ABC News producer's home, who was raided by the FBI. It is a little bit confusing. Check out the NPR article about it. I was shocked NPR did some actual journalism and actually brought up this issue and pointed out why exactly the Rolling Stone was wrong. Yeah, so I compare the two here. Washington Post. Cuties is an unflinching look at what it means to be a preteen girl. No wonder people can't handle it. And then Sound of Freedom, box office hit whose star embraces QAnon. So, Cuties, actual child abuse material, good. Sound of Freedom, actively fighting against child abuse, very, very bad, very, very scary. It's just such an interesting dynamic, and I think we all kind of knew that they thought this way, but it's been really interesting to see this in focus. Really interesting. Yeah, how an unreleased Netflix film whipped up a frenzy of fury. Netflix's controversial child exploitation film is bold, flawed, and misunderstood. Yeah, and then one of them was talking about how there was some kind of craze about fighting this childhood stuff, and I was just like, you know what? If that's a phase on the right, I'm happy to be on the right. Or if that's what's going on the right, I'm delighted to be on the right, because I can't imagine a better cause to stand behind, honestly, because the left is doing just quite the opposite. As you can see from what the mainstream media is saying, it's not at all shocking to us, but here we are. I'm more than happy to stand on the side that's supposedly affiliated with QAnon. Give me a break. All right, on that topic, let's get a little bit lighter. Let's talk about some illicit drugs. White House has still not named the cocaine culprit after a week after drugs were discovered. After a week of drugs, it's been much more than a week of drugs for those people. Pressure grows on Secret Service to track down suspects as Biden administration keeps changing stories. Yeah. Investigations into the discovery of cocaine at the White House Sunday is still open and active, USS spokesman Anthony Guglielmi told DailyMail.com. I'm shocked I was able to read that in my first go. Longtime FBI agent and former CBP chief said the case is straightforward. Yeah, we know exactly who it was. Pretty straightforward. Secret Service agents found last Sunday a white powder substance that tested positive for cocaine in the West Wing of the White House. Yep, correct. The White House evacuated with a hazmat situation when a uniformed USS agent found cocaine in a lockbox for cell phones outside of a secure meeting area. Since the discovery, there have been few questions answered on how the cocaine made its way into the White House and who the culprit could be. Stuart, thank you for your super chat. Most of the film critics concentrate on the audience ratings than the movie itself. Actually, we looked the other day at the Rotten Tomatoes review of Sound of Freedom. Did really well on the audience side, and did quite well on the critics side as well. 75% from the critics, something like 94% from the audience. It was pretty universal hit. So pretty impressive. Honestly, it was very well done. People liked it in general. So a few questions have been answered. Let's see here. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre suggested during a briefing last week that it could have been a guest that left it on the cell phone cubby. When reached by dailymail.com for an update, the White House has a short response in all lowercase letters, USSS. So they're just referring this news source to the United States Secret Service. Secret Service Communications Office has remained tight-lipped and repeatedly said that the agency cannot provide comment on the ongoing investigation. When are they going to close it, and what are they going to find? I know they have absolutely no motivation to actually discuss who it might actually be, but we know of one crack fiend who was recently in the White House. It's incredibly common sense to draw the direct line between a certain gentleman and a certain baggie of white powder. Peruvian white marching powder, I believe it's called. The D.C. Fire Department was called to evaluate, quickly determine the item is non-hazardous. Morgan explained the permanent White House staff likely would not be using the cubbies, but that it could have been utilized by a senior-level official visiting the White House for a meeting. Possible. Well, there's no news. Basically, the White House keeps bluffing. Casey says they believe it was Sniffy McSniffer Jr., Senior sniffs kids. Yes, correct. They're always sniffing something, those Bidens. Speaking of the Biden administration, here we have some good news. A judge maintains a ban on federal censorship communication with social media. At first, this headline confused me, but what's going on here is that this judge is maintaining a ban on the feds communicating with big tech platforms. So let's read a little bit. Judge gives a few examples of the voluminous evidence that led him to issue the preliminary injunction, says states can sue to vindicate their, quote, quasi-sovereign interests. The Justice Department failed to convince a federal judge to lift his preliminary injunction that bans several forms of contact among the White House, federal agencies, and social media companies as a First Amendment lawsuit against alleged government-tinged censorship proceeds. So what the Biden administration had done was try to go to this judge and convince him to backtrack on what he said. They failed, understandably, and it honestly was kind of blowing my mind as I was looking at tonight's story, that we were even in this situation where the Biden administration was trying to do this, because to me, that's shocking. Okay, I'm only 31, only in my 30s, and I've never seen anything like this, and I never thought I would see anything like this. For the government to sue a state and be like, hey, you know what, we would really like to continue to talk to, not to sue, but to file this brief against the state and say, no, we need to continue to talk to big tech platforms and make sure that they're doing what we want them to do. Absolutely wild to me, off the chain. Louisiana and Missouri instead have standing to sue the feds under Supreme Court precedent that allowed Massachusetts to sue the Environmental Protection Agency to protect its quasi-sovereign interests rather than challenge a federal lawsuit's application for its citizens. Speaking of Massachusetts, we're going to look at them too because they're also being sued for something similar to this. Plaintiffs are likely to prove that all the enjoined defendants coerced, significantly encouraged, and or jointly participated in social media companies to suppress social media posts by American citizens that expressed opinions that were anti-COVID-19 vaccine, anti-COVID-19 lockdowns, posts that delegitimized or questioned the results of the election, and other content not subject to any exception to the First Amendment. That's right. This is very serious stuff. So here we go to Massachusetts on a similar issue. At least this isn't the federal government doing this right now. Massachusetts is being sued for working with Google to secretly put spyware on residents' phones. So while we are looking at Louisiana and Missouri as doing the correct things, here we have an example of a state that is doing the absolute worst possible thing you can imagine. And I didn't pull this up, but I want to mention too what's going on in France at this point because something similar is happening over there and they have nothing to defend them. They have no constitution. So let's talk about this real quick. If I can catch my breath. A newly released video highlights how the Massachusetts Department of Public Health allegedly colluded with Google to secretly install COVID tracking spyware on some of the smartphones of more than 1 million residents without their knowledge or consent. A video published by the New Civil Liberties Alliance, a self-described civil rights group devoted to protecting Americans from administrative overreach, walks viewers through the core tenets of the organization's ongoing lawsuit against the Department of Public Health and Democrat Governor Maura Healey, who most notably is the first lesbian governor of any state. I just want that to be known. She's a little bit like Karine Jean-Pierre, a little bit of a diversity hire. At least, I guess, Massachusetts put her into office by voting for her instead of the president installing her. But still, her claim to fame is being the first gay governor. So let's get that out of the way. Actually, she's not. The first gay governor was in Colorado, I think. But he was a guy and she's a lady, so it's apparently more important. Which claims Massachusetts violated state residents and workers' 4th and 5th Amendment rights by installing a COVID contact tracing app on their Androids without their awareness or permission. Wow. According to NCLA's legal complaints, DPH launched an initial version of the app for Android mobile devices in April 2021 using software provided to the agency by Google. Right, so that's how they did it. They were able to collude with Google to make sure that the citizens, obviously the least important part of these particular players' equation, were being scrutinized thoroughly. They were literally tracking people to make sure that they were reporting where they said they were when they were reporting their COVID stuff. Absolutely crazy to me. User attempts to delete the app from his or her respective devices proved unsuccessful as DPH would allegedly, quote, reinstall it onto the device. They made it hard to find on your phone because it doesn't show up on the home screen with every other app you have. You have thousands and thousands of people who don't know this is on their phone. According to NCLA, the app purportedly acts as spyware that deliberately tracks and records movement and personal contacts onto over 1 million mobile devices without the owner's permission and awareness. Among the data accessible to DPH and Google are, quote, personal identifiers, including the device owner's media access control address. I'm sure Andy would know more about that. Wireless network IP addresses, phone numbers, and personal emails. So they literally had access to people's emails as well as their contacts. So when you get one person's contact, you can have, okay, so Tim used to talk about this a lot. He'd be like, they'll look at your phone and they'll be like, who's listed as mom? Who's that person's number? What number is that? What name is that number assigned to? Oh, so that person's your mom? Okay, cool. So now we know, since they're tracking your location, they can find out if you do visit your mom. And then if you report on their app and you say, yeah, I went over to my mom's house yesterday, they can say, actually, you were there for a whole week and you didn't report that. Now you're in trouble. This is crazy, dystopian, oh my gosh, Orwellian level stuff. And of course it would be for Massachusetts. Of freaking course it would be. As part of their suit, plaintiffs are requesting the U.S. District Court of Massachusetts issue an injunction barring continued installation of the app without user consent and requiring DPH to work with Google to uninstall the app and delete all records from the devices in which the owner did not give permission for installation. Plaintiffs are further requesting the court declare the alleged installation of the app without proper consent constitutes a violation of their 4th and 5th Amendment rights. Correct. Defendants in the case have since filed a motion to dismiss NCLA's request for injunctive relief, claiming the case is now moot since the software was purportedly discontinued when the state's exposure notification system was shut down following the expiration of the U.S. COVID public health emergency May 11th. So this was just 2 months ago that they got rid of this. Yes, it was on your phone for 2 years, but they got rid of it. So now they're like, okay, this doesn't matter. Sure, it was happening. Yes, we were doing that, but we're not doing it anymore. So I'm sure we definitely won't ever do anything like that ever again. Our bad. Just kidding. We don't feel bad about it at all, and we will never be punished for it because we're just saying, yeah, actually, we're not doing it anymore. So NCLA filed an opposition to the defendant's motion to dismiss on June 11th. I will be following this case with great interest. That's crazy. That's crazy. That is so Orwellian. I cannot wait until the feds try to do this too. Although they kind of did this on a whole different level where they were talking to social media companies. Exact same thing at more than one levels. Absolutely wild to me. But here we are. I just want you guys to be aware of it so we can keep pushing back on it and hold people accountable for it, because if we don't hold people accountable for this stuff, it's going to keep happening and it's going to get worse. So, goodness gracious. Stevie says, be like Hillary, smash your phones. That's an idea. Kwan Yaron says, if Coke was found at the Trump White House, they'd be talking about it for years. That's right. It's been a week now. We still talking about Coke. Who cares? I care. because this proves the lack of transparency in the Biden administration. And for people who got into office by saying decency is back on the ballot, incredibly hypocritical. And I actually view this as kind of a good thing, because I see this as just one more issue on which Biden is losing ground. And they're already kind of floating the idea of getting rid of him altogether. We'll see what happens with that. Let's pull up the French issue. French bill monitor residents? Couldn't think. Okay. Gizmodo. France passes new bill allowing police to remotely activate cameras on citizens' phones. Right. Yeah. So this is kind of along the same lines as what Massachusetts is doing. So interesting that this actually started in the U.S., where we supposedly have Fourth and Fifth Amendment protections against this stuff. But France is taking a page out of our book, so good for them. They're going to be much more like Massachusetts moving forward. The bill will reportedly apply to suspects in crimes that are punishable by a minimum of 5 years in jail. I'm sure that's all this will be used for, of course. Right, Patriot Act vibes here. Amidst ongoing protests in France, the country has just passed a new bill that will allow police to remotely access suspects' cameras, microphones, and GPS on cell phones and other devices. This is basically exactly what Massachusetts was doing. So good for them, just blazing the way here. As reported by Le Monde, the bill has been criticized by the French people as a snooper's charter that allows police unfettered access to the location of its citizens. Well, anything to keep them safe, right? Surely this is just for the children. Surely, like the Patriot Act, it would never be used for anything bad. I have a great feeling about this. Moreover, police can activate cameras and microphones to take video and audio recordings of suspects, certainly without their knowledge. The bill would reportedly only apply to suspects in crimes that are punishable by a minimum of 5 years in jail. Justice Minister Eric Dupond-Moretti claimed that the new provision would only affect a few dozen cases per year. Of course, just a few people, just a few really, really special people that we're keeping a really close eye on. We would never use this for anything else, and you can trust us because we are the government and we are here to help. During a debate over the bill yesterday, French politicians added an amendment that orders judge approval for any surveillance conducted under the scope of the bill and limits the duration of surveillance to 6 months, according to Le Monde. That's better than nothing, I guess. And I mean, looking at the U.S., looking at what's happening in Massachusetts, it's clear that our Constitution is just so much paper to these people, they don't care at all. So we might as well not even have it, since what's going to happen in France is exactly what already has happened for over 2 years in our own wonderful homeland of the United States. But to be fair, Massachusetts is a bit of a special exception. They are the People's Republic of Massachusetts, my parents used to call it. That's crazy to me. Not even California is doing that. That's blowing my mind. I hope that nobody that I knew who lives up there had this app on their phone. Crazy. That makes me furious. The bill comes after a time when the French government previously expanded police authority via technology. That's nice. In 2021, the New York Times reported the French parliament passed a bill that would expand the French police force's ability to monitor civilians using drones. French President Emmanuel Macron argued at the time that the bill was meant to protect police officers from increasingly violent protesters. Yeah, if your protests are getting more violent, maybe you should figure out what you're doing wrong in your government to make that happen, and figure out less invasive ways to crack down on it, because that is just such a violation of human rights and dignity and privacy. All right, you guys, we have just a couple short stories to cover here. Oh my gosh, I can't breathe. Crazy. Here is the article that I was looking at right before tonight's show. And I want to talk about this because the impact of TikTok on our youth, absolutely no joke. And I don't mean just the China factor. What the internet has done to our kids these days is truly distressing. And I know that anonymity is supposed to be a positive thing. Andy constantly is talking about how we need anonymity to make sure that people can report these news stories without fear of backlash, and I agree that's true. But what is happening with social media and young people is bad in pretty much every conceivable way. So let's read about this case. I'm no racist. Poolside Karen breaks her silence and claims she was the one attacked by wannabe TikTokers who clawed at her hair so violently their artificial nails broke off, then goaded her into a rant and edited clips for views. Interesting. That doesn't sound like anything that people of a certain age bracket would do. Blair Featherman, 49, launched into a racist rant at her luxury apartment complex in Colorado, calling a group of Latinos, quote, trash. Featherman told DailyMail.com that she was attacked and goaded into her comments by a wannabe model who is desperate for the TikTok views. I'm not a racist. It was deceptively edited and put together to tell a narrative that is not true, she said. Yes, I agree that's entirely possible to do. Let's read some of the context. The woman dubbed Poolside Karen after a rant of her shouting abuse at a group of Latinos has spoken out for the first time and insists she's not a racist. I have been trying to stay silent and not comment about this, but there are things the video doesn't show. Art consultant Featherman, 49, said, I'm not a racist. It was deceptively edited and put together to tell a narrative that is not true. Right. Okay, cool. Good for her. Let's see. In the video posted on TikTok by hairdressers Jada Gallardo, Featherman is shouting racist epithets at a group of people sitting around the pool at the Alta Green Mountain apartment complex in Lakewood, Colorado, where units rent for up to $6,500. She called the group trash and said they should go back to Denver before berating them for not knowing what Hermes is. I'm not sure what Hermes is either, so she probably would have been insulting me too, and I am not Latino, so. But Featherman, who claims to be an expert in feng shui, I don't know how it's pronounced, you guys know what I'm talking about, the Chinese art of furniture arrangement, said she was attacked after complaining that the group was breaking rules about the number of guests a resident at the complex could take to the pool. She admits she was wrong to take the bait and get involved in an argument, but said things had developed to a point of exasperation. Featherman told DailyMail.com the group was loud and there were too many people around the pool who did not live at the community. That's when things escalated, she claimed, saying members of the group started shouting racial epithets at her and filming her as she sat poolside. They were calling me a white B-word and white this and white that, she said. But here's the thing, the way they have this dynamic set up, it doesn't matter what they call you. It's not racist because they are the oppressed minority, whoever is in this other demographic, if they're not white and you are, calling you white isn't really an insult in the same way that calling someone a Latina would be. I was already having a bad day, but this was too much. As she reached for the phone, she claimed she was physically attacked. One woman clawed at her hair so violently her artificial nails broke off. She does look a little bit crazy, I'm not going to lie. And here is her gentleman trying to hold her back, it looks like. I don't know who that is, though. Hurling racial abuse at a group for having a party. Right. The alleged attack is not included in the video that the person posted on TikTok, and Featherman said the video is cut so it follows on several minutes later from a different angle. In the chaotic aftermath of the event, she's seen in the video on the lounge chair, furious and frantic, while her boyfriend calls for help and the agitated crowd surrounds her from above. Everyone is seen shouting at each other. I couldn't believe what just happened. My heart was racing. I was so full of adrenaline, she said. I couldn't think straight. Okay, so my greater point here is that TikTok is encouraging people to do this kind of thing. So it encourages you to take all your friends to the pool and cause trouble and get some white person in trouble by waiting until or goading them. It does sound, I would believe her story that she was goaded into saying something racist. I don't think it's the best response to anything like this. Obviously, I don't think that telling someone to, quote, go back to Denver is a slur either. If she doesn't think that if she doesn't think you belong in her neighborhood, she's going to say stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't really matter the color of your skin. And I have to be honest, you don't see a lot of this kind of conflict between white people and Latinos, but could be just a racist lady. But at the end of the day, how often have you guys seen someone just scream racism at someone else, especially in the US? I just don't see it. It's not a thing. It's culturally enforced against, so it doesn't happen very often. But that was just as an aside. We're going to touch momentarily on this from Andy says it's pronounced Fang. Thank you, dear. I appreciate that correction. We're going to look at this conversation about Anheuser-Busch because they put out another ad, which obviously I'm not going to show because they will get it taken down for copyright. You guys should go check it out. It is over on my Twitter. A Tale of Two Maps, how Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser lost their crown as the king of beers after $20 billion Dylan Mulvaney debacle. Maps from April and July show the effect the marketing blunder has had. Modelo Especial came out on top for the majority of U.S. states on July 4th. Yeah. Sales of Bud Light have been plummeting since their partnership with transgender influencer, with 2 maps showing how far the king of beer has fallen since April. Let's see. Most popular beers by state from April to July. Bud is this red color that you see almost everywhere, right? Maine, New York, West Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, Georgia, all those states. And we also have Coors, very popular too. PBR, Arizona gets some better taste. Sam Adams, good taste. Oklahoma for sure. The black is Guinness. Oh my, interesting taste. And then we have Miller Lite and Michelob Ultra. And then we have nothing from Bud Light. Holy cow. Wow. Bud Light is gone. Wow. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. That's actually a kind of shocking map. First of all, this was a very diverse map. They had Miller Lite, Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, Busch Light. But Bud Light, I'm sorry, is this lighter peachish color, not this red color. The red color is Budweiser. Please let me correct myself. So Budweiser is very popular in all these states. Bud Light is popular in Florida, for one. Definitely not anymore. Hey, look at that. Now Florida likes Modelo. Shocking. Shocking, shocking. And even places like Oregon and Washington prefer Yuengling and Michelob Ultra and all these other kinds. That's so interesting. What's Massachusetts? Massachusetts and Miller Lite. Wow, yeah, they really fell off. So this is what cultural enforcement looks like, right? So this isn't someone on social media screaming and shouting. This isn't even someone in the town square yelling, hey, don't drink Bud Light. They're going to make the frogs gay or whatever. This is people joking with their friends. Oh, haha, if you drink Bud Light, that means this about you. So don't do it. Haha, just making fun of you. Just kind of ribbing, teasing, light bullying, what have you. And it works. It really, really works. So I feel like I'm constantly talking about cultural enforcement, and here we can actually see it, the change between April and July. Interesting. I wonder why there's so much less diversity than there was. It looks like Budweiser is off altogether. Interesting. That might be it. But also so is Stella, Heineken, Coors. Coors is still big. Yeah, so you're just left with Modelo, Coors, Miller Lite, Yuengling, and Michelob Ultra. Interesting. Let's see. Modelo Especial has a stranglehold on the bottom half of the country, stretching from California to Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis previously slammed Bud Light. The other fun thing about Ron DeSantis I didn't realize, today I realized that he was one of the first people to screen the Sound of Freedom's trailer. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't realize that. Modelo surpassed Bud Light's $297 million, which was a 22.8% fall in sales compared to the same time last year. They reported 11% increase in sales for the second quarter of this year. Interesting. It's the first time since 2001 that Bud Light has not been in the top spot, dethroning its sister brand Budweiser for the King of Beer title in 2001. Yeah, I bet you a nickel that Budweiser is being similarly affected by the fall of this. And this guy, this smarmy, smug devil, he is the one doubling down on this. And I just have to say, he deserves every bit of it. Every bit. So much so. Oh, people really like Guinness. This genuinely kind of surprises me. So Guinness is now the number one. Corona, Heineken, Sam Adams, Blue Moon. I personally really liked when I drank. I really liked Sam Adams and Blue Moon. Never liked Budweiser. Modelo was okay. Corona, Stella. I like Stella too. Those are my top three. Coors and Bud Light is number 14 now. Number 14 instead of number 1. How the mighty fall. Oh my goodness. So Stuart says Bud Light is now a pariah. It has been ostracized from even the alcoholic community. LOL. Yes, 100%. 100%. Texas Ranger says Bud Light is less popular to drink than Camp Lejeune water. Yes, I think you're right, unfortunately. Yeah, and so like I said, they just did another ad, which I'm not going to show on here because copyright strikes and they are out to get people. You guys should check it out. It's a lady who's sitting in the middle of a storm and she's just completely ignoring it. And I'm like, look, live footage of, Anheuser-Busch just pretending that this whole thing didn't happen. And it's not working for them. It's not working at all. And for their CEO to go out there and be like, oh yeah, no, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Ridiculous. Stevie says, I'm not going to lie. It's pretty funny how expensive that ad campaign was. Yeah. Texas Ranger says, drink local, don't drink big companies. Yeah. See, I'm from Colorado. When you were drinking local, you were drinking like really pretentious, like microbrews. Never really liked any of those. So I just kind of stuck to the more reliable. And I've always kind of been that way. I like Starbucks because it's reliable, right? You know exactly what you're getting all the time. You can get the exact same drink anywhere you go. I appreciate that consistency. Whatever. Jazzy Naya says, support your local non-woke brewers. Yes. There actually was a brewer in Texas that shut down a Kyle Rittenhouse event, and I was like, there's a local brewer I would certainly never use. So let's close with a little bit more Hollywood gossip. We'll be done. I can barely breathe. I got to get out of here. We're going to go over to the beach and chill. Megan McCain says, Jonah Hill's ex slams him as a misogynist narcissist, but before he's canceled, is it really so wrong for a man to ask his girlfriend to respect his boundaries? We women do the same all the time. I don't know if you guys have followed this at all. It's really not important. I just found it super interesting because it is such a hypocrisy coming from a feminist. Let's read. Hear ye, the court of public opinion is in session. On stand is actor Jonah Hill, accused by his ex-girlfriend of being an emotionally abusive, misogynist narcissist. Now, full disclosure, they broke up like 2.5 years ago. Jonah just had a baby with his current girlfriend, and everything seems to be going fine for him, but this lady cannot handle it. Apparently, she doesn't like seeing other people be happy. The potential punishment? Cultural cancellation. But please, dear public, before you pass judgment, let's review all the evidence. And remember, the era of blanket believe women mantra is over, or at least I hope it is. This past weekend, pro surfer Sarah Brady, who broke up with Hill in 2022, posted dozens of his alleged year-old text messages on her Instagram account. In one message from a number labeled Jonah, he purportedly lays out his boundaries for their relationship. If you need surfing with men, boundaryless, inappropriate friendships with men, to model, to post pictures of yourself in a bathing suit, to post sexual pictures, friendships with women who are in an unstable place, and from your wild recent past beyond getting a lunch or coffee or something respectful, I'm not the right partner for you. So I just have to stop and say, I truly appreciate this level of transparency. 100%. For someone to come out and say, hey, if you do this stuff, this is just a deal breaker for me. I'm sorry, I can't deal with it. I won't be able to be your boyfriend, beau, whatever. And we can leave on good terms, not the end of the world, whatever. But beyond this point, I can go no further. I just can't. That to me speaks of someone who actually respects themselves and who respects their partner and who isn't trying to waste their partner's time, especially when their partner is a female. So I really, really hate to see guys string along girls, especially when they are closing in on the edge of their reproductive window, to be fair. I feel like women's time needs to be respected. They need to respect it themselves, and men need to respect it too. So if you come across a partner who is telling you upfront exactly what works for them and exactly what doesn't, great. Value it. Appreciate it. And if it doesn't work for you, at least respect that they had the courage to tell you exactly what they were looking for and exactly what they couldn't handle. So here she is saying, cattily, passively, reviving a pic I took down by request of a misogynist narcissist. And here she is with a very, very low-cut, midriff-exposed top in the desert. Beautiful picture, whatever. I don't know how, if you guys are married, I don't know how your spouses would feel about you posting a picture like this to your Instagram, especially if you have a large following, especially if you have a lot of friends who are males, especially if you have a lot of friendships with wild women doing crazy things. I don't know. It just depends on the situation. And I think that everyone's relationship is different, obviously, but everyone is entitled to their own boundaries. Okay. Let's be real about this. If I had said to Andy before we were married, look, this and this really bother me. Please don't do them anymore. And he'd said, no, I'm going to keep doing them. I've been like, this isn't working. I'm going to go find somebody who actually respects my boundaries. And that's how that would have shaken out. That's how I think it should be. But you know what I wouldn't have done is turned around and said, my ex whatever is narcissistic and emotionally abusive for requesting these things of me and telling me his boundaries. That's not emotional abuse. I'm sorry. Nah. Jonah goes off on another text in an online video of Brady surfing in a one-piece bathing suit that he describes as flaunting her butt in a thong. Another missive shows Jonah, we don't even know this is Jonah, right? reportedly dropping the F word, oh no, swearing, complaining that she doesn't respect his feelings. Well, it sounds like they had problems in their relationship. If this actually was Jonah, and if he was feeling like she doesn't respect his feelings, that's exactly what it looks like to me based on what she's just now doing. The things he's asking and the way she's responding, she clearly did not respect his feelings or his boundaries. So, sounds like he was in the right there. For his part, Jonah Hill, who recently announced he and his new girlfriend welcomed their first baby in June, has stayed silent. Brady's acting like a martyr. She claims she released the private text as a warning to all girls and called on Hill's friends to hold him accountable. I'm not sure what that means, but pretty sure that sounds threatening. Does she want him excluded from entertainment industry, his career ruined, his reputation destroyed? In the past, he's been open about his struggles with mental health, anxiety, and panic attacks. So this sounds consistent, okay? So for him to request certain things from her and to also have a history of panic attacks, anxiety, mental health issues, etc., that sounds exactly the same. To me, this sounds like him just being sane and sober and upfront and respecting her as a human being. From what I've seen, I don't think Hill sounds anything like the monster his ex portrays him to be. In fact, I believe what she's done to him to be terribly unfair. He essentially told her, if you don't like my lifestyle or my expectations, we probably shouldn't be together. If these things bring you to a place of happiness, I support it and there will be no hard feelings, he supposedly wrote. These are my boundaries for a romantic partnership. Good for him, seriously, and I do agree with Meghan McCain here on very little else, but definitely with this one. In this day and age, a man asking a female partner to practice modesty and restraint is automatically interpreted as misogyny. I think that's the heart of the issue. Women who identify as traditional wives, aka trad wives, and embrace conventional housewife roles are looked at with suspicion. The new trend for submissive women has a dark past and history. Read one article from the UK's Guardian. I don't see it that way. Ask yourself, if these roles were reversed and Brady was asking Hill to avoid hanging out with other women or with men she didn't like, would she be considered an abuser? Of course not. Absolutely not. She says, see the misuse of the term boundaries? No, I don't. And I think you're a terribly snaky woman. Wow. I mean, this is, first and foremost, this is just a betrayal of trust, okay? You don't share someone else's private missives to you with the public, especially in the hopes of dragging them, right? This is something we've seen from the right lately, and I hated it there, and I hate it here. I don't like it. That violates a very, very basic fundamental trust that people have between one another. This is the most private conversations that you have with your partner in this instance. Disgusting. I don't condemn men for telling their partners what they want. Women generally encourage the men in their lives to communicate and avoid harboring bitter feelings, of course. I'm certainly no trad wife, but I wouldn't do so easily dismiss that lifestyle either. Healthy relationships are based on mutual trust and respect. Some men want a wife who will stay at home and take care of the kids. Some men want to be with a powerhouse CEO. When I was single, I dated my fair share of men who had certain expectations of me. One guy didn't like my politics. He worked in the entertainment industry, feared the stigma of being with a conservative woman, and wanted me to change. Well, that relationship ended immediately, his loss. Ultimately, I married a conservative man. That's right, Ben Domenech. I like and appreciate Ben's work. We've been together almost a decade and have 2 children together. That's why people date, for the right person who shares their beliefs and values. I'm not going to defend everything Hill allegedly said. Cursing at a partner, whether over text or in person, can be intimidating and cruel, but does that make him a villain, an emotional abuser deserving of ridicule and punishment? It also must be every public person's nightmare to have their private messages blasted out for the world to read and judge. I can't imagine what it must be like to date under those circumstances, and honestly, I'm glad that Jonah's off the dating market. I'm glad he has his current girlfriend and his kid. Hopefully he's very happy, and I hope this doesn't bother his life going forward, because that is just such a shady, rude, and distinctly female thing to do. I'm just so grossed out by that, and I hope that the court of public opinion convenes quickly and we can immediately forget about all this nonsense. Jonah Hill did nothing wrong. # pass it on. Definitely. Stuart says trad husbands are important too. 100%. 100%. You cannot be a trad wife without a supportive, wonderful trad husband who wants that for you if that's what you want for yourself. So, good stuff. Andy says, even if it ended horribly, that's just crossing such a huge line. I would never ever date a woman who ever did such a thing. That's a great point. What a worse thing to do, even after the relationship is completely over, to post private text messages between each other. Yes. Truly, truly disgusting. Stuart says, remember to support PublicSq HERE, everyone. Thank you for that. And he says, www.publicsq.com. Yes, Texas Ranger says Camp Lejeune water is more popular than Bud Light. That's right. In some places, water is less expensive than Bud right now. Sorry, water is more expensive than Bud. So Bud is cheaper. Bud Light is cheaper than water. So good stuff. Dip living that cat life. That's right. You can see him changing positions over the course of my conversation this evening. I can't believe I made it almost an hour. I definitely did not think I was going to make it that long tonight. Thank you guys all so much for sticking with me. I enjoy your company. Is Andy a trad hubby? Asked Connie Ron. Yes, I would definitely say so. He's the breadwinner. He's the bacon bringer. I try to do all the household stuff. He made the house. I try to turn the house into a home. That's kind of the deal. Keep track of the budget. Make sure we have everything in the fridge and all that good stuff. So, all right, you guys, I am well out of breath. This baby is squeezing my lung capacity no end. It's ridiculous. And they've started, ever since they came into existence, basically, they've been making it really, really hard for me to breathe. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to go over to the beach. It's going to be awesome. We found a wonderful beach, and I was looking at my ring. I was telling Andy, I was like, my ring looks exactly like this water. And I had a chance the other evening to actually show him that it looks exactly like the water. It's exactly the same shade. It's crazy. It's like this really light green with gold in the middle. Beautiful. Beautiful beach. Wonderful opportunity to get in there and be that human submarine I've always wanted to be this entire pregnancy. And I just have been so enjoying it. Hopefully we can go back after I'm done here. All right, guys, I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you all so much for joining me. Appreciate that for sure. Andy says I'm the bacon eater mostly, though. Yes, he is. He does appreciate good bacon. All right, until next time, bye, guys. How's it going?